My name is Caitlin Eskelson. I am the president and CEO here at Visit Salt Lake. At Visit Salt Lake, one of the things we really wanted to understand was why people were returning to our destination in and around the recovery, how that trajectory increased so rapidly, and what people were doing while they were here. Historically, what we've always seen in our community is that we have a midweek peak, meaning that we had business travelers, convention travelers that were driving up demand during the week. Well, during COVID and into recovery, this had drastically switched. So what we were seeing is peak periods being on the weekends, which was entirely opposite of what we had seen prior to COVID. So what we were going through in the middle of recovery was also an entire rebrand of our destination. So we were seeing a whole different strategy come into play of how we were going to cater to conventions as they came back, but the leisure traveler that we had seen such an influx of during this COVID and coming out of recovery. So what we started to see throughout this process is as we started to show greater assets for Salt Lake County, we started to generate more interest in that convention goer. And while I'm not trying to paint a rosy picture that they all rebounded overnight, because they haven't, Salt Lake did retain its market share to a point that we are now a higher recovery or a faster recovery than our comp set around the nation. During the past summer months, we worked with Zartico to analyze the number of conferences in Salt Lake in 2021 as compared to our comp set destinations. The yellow dots that you're seeing indicate the volume of conferences. And when we look at the recovery as measured by the number of conferences in 2021 at 2019 levels, Salt Lake is on par with the nation and outperforming most of our competitive set markets. One of the biggest questions we were looking to tackle, it was how people are traveling in and around Salt Lake. That was what our partners wanted to know. You know, how are they coming into Salt Lake and how are they experiencing our entire region? So again, with the help of Zartico, Visit Salt Lake is now able to show our destination partners the increase in visitor movement around the Salt Lake region. You can see this on the slide. You can see where the airport is, the big line showing from airport to downtown, and then how people are branching out from there. As you know, from a DMO perspective, this is a critical tool to show people that they are getting their fair share of the visitor travel. So one of the most interesting things that we learned was that visitors were actually moving in and around our county even more than they had the prior year, which is super interesting. But not so interesting in that that's what we had been pitching with our new brand, was the hiking and the biking, because that was what was most relevant for the time. So going back, taking it full circle back to what the properties were asking in terms of why do we have peaks on the weekends, not the weekdays? It's because we're seeing this kind of visitor movement, which is much more inclined toward the leisure traveler. Some of our takeaways from this entire experience are first and foremost to love your leisure. And what we mean by that is make sure that it's a diversified strategy that has conventions in play as well as leisure. So a few things that you can do and that we did that were successful is coordinating our sales and marketing efforts around our yield management. So really talking to our hotels and restaurants and asking them, what are your need times? When do you need people in your doors? What does it look like? Proactively reach out to your restaurants and your shops. Now, I know a lot of times we just turn directly to our hotels, but really the restaurants and shops are what are going to tell us what people are doing while they're there. How much are they spending? How are they traveling throughout your community? Notify our hotels for events and people booking outside the block. So historically, especially from the convention side of things, we always want people to book within the block. Yes, we love that, but we also know that not all of them do. So what you can do is you can actually turn to a platform like Zartico and ask them, how are people booking? How do we know how to aggregate all of that? I think what we learned as a community, and I'm sure you have in your DMO space, is that we are all in this together. And the more information sharing that we can do across all platforms, you know, both ways, from the restaurants and the shops and the hotels and vice versa, we will come out of this stronger and healthier together. And I think that it really helps instill the value that Visit Salt Lake or a DMO provides to the community moving forward.